Nolan, writer photographer, can't remember anything from his life after a terrible car crash that badly injured his brain. Sadly, the crash also took his wife Rachel's life. Now his young daughter Ava has to constantly help him remember his past activity in the people he used to know to try and get his memories back. He watches a video of the first time he held Eva. He also looks through a family photo album, but nothing triggers his memory. Feeling upset, he throws the album aside and quits trying. When he tries to get off the couch, he suddenly feels like someone invisible is holding him down and choking him. Amid his struggle, Ava's voice calling him wakes him up. Ava tells him they need to get going. They want to make it to his appointment on time. While he's getting ready, Ava shows him a photo of a woman to see if he remembers who she is. When he mistakenly says Karen, Eva corrects him, saying the woman's name is Kathy. Nolan then remembers that Kathy has been his boss for 12 years, and he was the main photographer at their office. As he picks up his phone, Nolan hears a voice message from Dr. Brooks' office inviting him to join a cognitive research study. He decides to ignore the message and leaves the house with Ava. Upon reaching Ava's school, she asked him to do their special handshake, but he gets it wrong. Ava reassures him that he'll get it right. Later, Nolan meets Kathy at the Southern Texas Chronicle office, hoping to get his job back. But as he starts to show her his recent work, Kathy cuts him off, explaining that the publisher won't rehire him and criticizing the fact that his new photos lack the quality of his previous work. Disheartened, Nolan returns to his car and drives to the hospital to visit his friend Dr. Gary Jaboa. After learning that Nolan's former publisher rejected him, Gary offers him some money to help out, but Nolan declines. Gary then notices Nolan's bandaged hand and asks about it. Nolan admits he punched a wall out of frustration, which surprises Gary since he's never known Nolan to lose his temper. Nolan's phone rings with a call from another doctor. Gary encourages him to think about Dr. Brooks' proposal, pointing out that despite the risks, she's a top expert in her field. They head to Dr. Brooks' office together, but Gary leaves to continue his hospital rounds. In the office, Dr. Brooks talks to Nolan about how his accident affected, but says his memory isn't lost. She suggests they try hypnosis to help him remember again. Nolan agrees to try, and they start the session. Soon Nolan feels like he's in a dark place, only hearing a ticking clock and a strange noise. Then he feels a hand touch him, which makes him jump up from the couch. Dr. Brooks calms Nolan down after he wakes up suddenly. She tells him that hypnosis helps reach the deeper parts of the mind, and it's normal not to see much. At first, Dr. Brooks is hopeful that her treatment will help him find his hidden memories. Nolan is not sure yet, but thinks about what she said and leaves. Someone from the school brings Ava home and forgot to pick up from school. She walks past her dad and goes to her room. The school person warns Nolan that forgetting Ava could lead to big trouble with child services. In the hospital, Dr. Brooks shows Nolan a new method, using a gadget called the black box, to help him experience his memories as if he were dreaming. She tells him to think of a safe room, his personal safe space, while using the device. When Nolan is under the effect of the black box, he's in a bedroom he considers his safe room. Dr. Brooks assures him he's safe in this room, but warns him not to leave because she won't be able to help him if he does. Dr. Brooks then suggests Nolan imagine a watch to help him go through his memories. While under hypnosis, she says, pushing the watch's button lets him go to a certain memory. Turning the dial forward takes him to the next and turning it back lets him see previous ones. Pushing the button again brings him back to a safe room. Following her guide, Nolan ends up with his wedding day in mind, but when he lifts his bride's veil, her face and those of the guests are blurry. He then sees a man with bent limbs coming towards him, which scares Nolan and makes him exit the session early. Talking about the bent limb man with Dr. Brooks, she thinks it's Nolan's mind, trying to protect him from upsetting memories at home. Nolan looks at Rachel's pictures on his phone and sees their wedding photo was taken outside, not in a church as he thought during hypnosis. Then he finds a chopstick on the floor, plays with it, and remembers eating sushi. The next day, Nolan takes Ava to a sushi bar, thinking back to when he first brought her there. At age 3 later, he tells Dr. Brooks about their visit to Nasei, the sushi place, and she shares her liking for it, making for a nice moment between them. When they get ready for more therapy, Nolan wonders if his memory could get better on its own. Without more sessions, Dr. Brooks tells him he has a condition called prosopagnosia, which makes it hard for him to recognize faces, explaining why people in his memories look blurry. She suggests they should try longer therapy sessions to help him see faces clearly, and gives him a saying to repeat if he feels scared. I run my mind, it doesn't run me. During therapy, Nolan imagines himself in a safe spot and uses an imaginary watch to go back to a memory. He's in a bedroom holding a broken hanger. He hears a baby crying and goes to check, showing he's exploring deep personal memories. In this memory, he sees a baby with a blurry face and realizes he's in a place he doesn't recognize as his home. Then he hears a woman crying and finds her with a blurry face and bruises, suggesting she's been hurt. Suddenly, a scary figure comes out of the baby's crib. Dr. Brooks that the figure choked him after he awoke, and she believes because his mind appears to be resisting the process. This indicates that he's almost ready to understand his memories better. Nolan feels the apartment he saw in his memory somehow familiar, but he knows he and Rachel have always lived in their since getting home. Married. Confused, he asks Gary if he ever fought with Rachel, but Gary assures him he didn't, suggesting the memory of the apartment might be because of stress after dropping Eva off at school. Nolan feels the need to check out the apartment. He remembered driving around. He starts recognizing places that lead him to the apartment building, showing he has some strong unknown link to it. Initially leaving Eva in the car, he quickly decides it's not right to leave her and takes her with him inside the building. He sees marks on the stairs that make him remember someone following them. He feels drawn to a door on the second floor and knocks. A little girl answers, but before she can get her mom, Nolan steps in to take a quick look around. Seeing the mom getting up, he quickly says sorry for barging in and leaves fast. Nolan goes back to Gary for giving him the address to look up. Gary writes it down, thinking over what it might mean. Nolan worries he might have had a secret relationship, but Gary doubts it next. Nolan has another session in the black box. With Dr. Brooks, he ends up at his wedding again. But the scary twisted man shows up once more. Nolan tries to ignore him, but the man gets close and hits him. Instead of waking up, Nolan goes back to his safe room and uses the watch to dive deeper into his memories. Facing the twisted man again, Nolan manages to fight back, this time showing he's ready to tackle his fears. Using the watch, he moves through different memories, uncovering more about his past and himself. He ends up in a hospital bed, really hurt, with a woman taking care of him. At first he can't see her face because of a condition that makes it hard for him to recognize faces. But as he goes through his memories, her face becomes clear, showing he's starting to get better. This woman is important in many memories. She's there at his wedding. She's the mom of a child, and she's the one watching over him at the hospital. But then Thomas realizes that the memories he's been seeing aren't his. He sees someone else in the mirror, not the person he thought he was. As he remembers asking his wife to marry him and taking their daughter to eat sushi, he understands that Dr. Brooks, the doctor helping him, is his mom. This changes everything for Thomas, making him see his memories and the people in a new way. Dr. Brooks tells him that Thomas is the real focus of her work. To help him remember, Thomas had a bad accident that made it impossible for him to live. Dr. Brooks used new technology to put Thomas's mind into another person's body. Dr. Brooks had to wait for the right time to move Thomas's mind into this new body. This shows how far she would go to save her son, even though it was a big decision with a lot of ethical questions. When Thomas realizes Dr. Brooks is his mom, it's a big moment for him, but it also makes things complicated. The scene then shifts to Thomas leaving Ava with Gary for safety, but gets upset while leaving her behind. Ava's note, "Don't forget about me," on his hand reminds him of the strong bond he's made while being Nolan. When Thomas gets to Miranda's place, Miranda warns him about calling the cops. Thomas tries to connect with Miranda by pretending to be a friend of her husband. Miranda, busy with tasks, excuses herself, but Thomas insists on talking for a short while. Miranda lets Thomas into the apartment, but she's hesitant. Thomas initiates a conversation about Dr. Brooks' work on using brainwaves to bring someone back from the dead. He tells Miranda he is her husband, Thomas, who has come back to life thanks to Dr. Brooks' experiments. Infuriated at his presumed joke, Miranda asks Thomas to leave the apartment to prove he's her husband. Thomas talks about personal things only they would know, like keeping wallpaper she doesn't as a reminder of their past together. These personal details show he's Thomas. Thomas explains that he's using the body of someone alive, trying to make Miranda feel okay about the situation. He wants to fix his anger issues and promises to be better. Thomas looks around and finds Miranda has taken down all photos of him, which upsets him. Miranda asks Thomas to leave, but he gets upset and tries to go to Ashley's room. Miranda tries to stop him, and he ends up forcing her against the wall. Thomas goes into the room and sees Ashley, who doesn't notice anything since she's busy doing her homework. While Thomas watches Ashley, Miranda hits him on the head from behind. When Thomas wakes up, he's outside Gary's house with Ava next to him, and a cut on his head He quickly goes to his car and sees a strange figure in the reflection of the window. Confused, Thomas drives to his mom's house to find out how he ended up outside without remembering anything. Dr. Brooks suggests that his mind moved him to a place he feels safe in to protect him. Gary looks up the address Nolan gave him online. He finds a news story that Thomas died at that address 2 years ago, linking Thomas to Dr. Brooks. Dr. Brooks tells Thomas that facing the twisted figure will help him get better, describing it as a virus he needs to get rid of. When Thomas is back in the black box, he opens the door to the twisted figure. After hearing a knock, the figure stands up straight and turns out to be Nolan, which shocks Thomas. Even though Thomas gets mad at Nolan, who doesn't fight back, things almost get really bad. When Thomas almost uses a knife on Nolan, Ava's voice calling for her dad stops him. Ava has come to the lab with Gary and tries to help her dad stop and come back to reality. Nolan tries to talk, letting Ava know he's there. Thomas thinks Nolan might be aware and alive, but his mom doesn't believe it. When Thomas is about to attack Nolan again, Ashley's voice stops him. He remembers the time Ashley tried to stop him fighting with Miranda. Ashley tries to save her mom by pushing Thomas, but he pushes back. Miranda then pushes Thomas to save Ashley, causing him to fall off the staircase. This makes Thomas think twice about hurting Nolan. He looks at his photos on the wall and goes to the door to leave the room. The alarm from the monitor goes off, and Dr. Brooks counts down and takes the device off Thomas's head. She holds his hand thinking he's Thomas. But when he wakes up, he calls Ava, and they do their special handshake. In the device, Thomas is alone in the dark, feeling bad about how he treated his wife and daughter. Dr. Brooks tries to put Nolan back in the device, but Gary stops her, reminding her of her doctor's promise. Gary then takes apart the device. As he leaves the lab, Nolan goes home feeling sad about the time while lost in his thoughts. When Ava comes to his room, Nolan wants to make things better and asks her to pick a book so he can read it to her. After losing her job, Dr. Brooks sits in front of her computer and tries to turn the device back on. She types some code and opens a file with Thomas's brainwaves. From a backup, she looks into the device, calls out to Thomas and smiles, and the movie ends.